Hey everyone, welcome back to the Stitch Sessions and welcome to Spooky Month. It's the first Wednesday in the month of October. And so I know a lot of you that are Halloween lovers are always looking for ways you can use your favorite craft of crochet and how we can create something fun for Halloween. And it just so happens that this year our crochet series is all about hats. So if you're new here, I do a crochet series every year based on a theme. So the first Wednesday of every month, we work on a project that's related to that theme. And for 2025, our theme is Hats All, folks. And so every month I've been doing a different hat project. So for the month of October, I thought this is a perfect opportunity to do something that's a little related to Halloween. Now, as you can see, this is like a hand-sized witch's hat, which is what I'm going to show you today. But basically, I'll explain to you the technique of how to start. And then if you would like to make this life-size, like for a full adult, you can certainly do that. I'm making mine very, I guess you would call this child size. Not that this can fit on a child's head. It's probably actually a doll size. But the whole point is that I'm going to affix it to this headband here. Look at that. And so now any size can be worn. So I myself as an adult will most likely wear this for some of my line dancing classes that I teach, just to add a little bit of festive fun. So that is why I'm making this size. And in case you're wondering, this particular hat sits approximately 5 inches tall, or about 13 centimeters. And the diameter of the hat, because I know you guys will ask me, is actually 5 inches wide. So also around 13 centimeters. So basically it's a nice kind of squared off effect. And I think this particular size is fantastic for things like adding it to headbands or even the tops of existing hats, I guess, if you want to do that. Or you can even just leave it as part of, you know, some festive table decor. You can add a lot of bling to it if you like, all kinds of things, beads, all kinds of fun things like that. So I'm going to show you the basis of how to create this hat today. And now this hat is done in black, but in the tutorial, I'm going to show you in a lighter color yarn so you can see it. And I hope you're going to have fun working on this, and leave me your feedback. I'm going to be very curious to see what you guys think of this month's hat tutorial. So without further ado, the next thing we're going to talk about is our materials, and then we're going to get stitching up our witch's hat. Okay, so these are the materials you should gather to make your witch's hat. So the first thing, of course, is you're going to need your yarn. Now, I would definitely recommend a medium 4-weight yarn to make the hat that I made exactly. And I'm just going to be using some leftover, and this is Loops and Threads, and it's called the Heathered Bamboo. Now, I do have a little caveat to this. My own little mini review. I was really excited about using this yarn because it's so soft and just lovely, but it is super splitty. So if you're a beginner, like brand new crocheter, I maybe would not use this yarn. You might want to use something like Red Heart, something really basic, a nice medium 4-weight yarn. So this is a medium 4, and you're not going to need a lot of it. So you can see I have some left over here. I did not need a full skein of yarn to create this hat. So 1 skein will be plenty. And the hook size I'm going to be using for this project is a 5mm hook, which is also known as an H or a size 8 if you go by those hook labels, okay? As always, make sure that you have a yarn needle to weave in your ends at the end, and of course a handy pair of scissors to snip your yarn. If you are going to affix your hat to something like I am, you might want to pick up some headbands. Now, I found these at the dollar store, and for $1.50, I was able to get 4 of these. So you can make your hats in all kinds of colors. So I'm just going to have the black. I might use the red to attach the orange, or actually, no, there's a brown one here. So I might use the brown one to attach the orange because I'm making this hat in orange. So really good deal. You can definitely find this at a local dollar store, craft shop. I'm sure you can find these on Amazon, but I'm not even going to stick a link because, I mean, you cannot beat $1.50 for 4 of these. So check those out if you can. And then if you're going to glue yours, I would get some kind of fabric glue, I think would be the best. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because it's going to be on the bottom. But I have this clear gel tacky glue, Alina's. I got this at Walmart, I believe, but I think they do sell this on Amazon in case you're wondering. I don't think you need anything fancy in terms of glue. You can also just simply sew it on, which I still might do, right? So you can just stick it here and then using the same color yarn, black thread or yarn, I'm going to use yarn, you would just loop it through and then secure it to your headband. So you don't really need anything too fancy in terms of what you need to affix to your headband. By the way, I totally forgot. If you want to adorn yours with a little ribbon, make sure that you have a ribbon on hand. So once you've got all your stuff together, let's get stitching up our cute little witch hat. Okay, so first thing to keep in mind is that this hat is going to be worked from the top downward. Okay, so we're going to start at the tip and then we're going to increase our way down to the brim and then we're going to work the brim. So it's just 2 main pieces. And the one thing that I'm going to kind of mention right at the top is that you are going to follow a certain rhythm of increasing your stitches and then not increasing and not increasing. So in between each round of increases, we are going to do about 2 rounds of non-increases. And I'll show you that as we begin. Oh, one more thing I should have said that you needed is probably some kind of a stitch marker. Okay, so safety pin, bobby pin, anything like that. So you could have like a bobby pin. I happen to have another little stitch marker here. Because we are going to be crocheting in the spiral round, it'll come in handy to help you mark your spot. Okay, so let's get started here with round number 1. So we're going to start off by creating a cinch circle. So it's going to look like you're going to start doing a slip knot, but you're not going to resolve the knot. You're going to pull it through. Well, there's a little splitty yarn there. Okay, so then I'm just going to chain 1 to secure my ring. Now, some people might ask me, can I do this with a chain 4 ring? I would say no, because of how we're working this, you see, I mean, you can't really see it in black, but you really want it to cinch nicely at the top. If you're using a lighter weight yarn, maybe, but for now, I would say try your best to use a cinch circle. Okay, oh, see, look at how that split. That is terrible. Okay, so I'm gonna try this again, insert, and then chain 1. Okay, so we have a little ring there. And so what we're going to do now is we are going to place 6 single crochets into this ring. So I'm going to insert my hook, pull up a loop, and single crochet. Okay, and I'm going to do that a total of 6 times. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so you've got a little curve happening there. Now all you're going to do is you're going to take your tail and you are going to cinch, pull it shut until your work starts to kind of bunch together. So you can see that. It's a little tight. It's going to feel a little awkward at the beginning, but once we get past this point here, you're going to be A-okay. So this is what's going to kind of create the point of our hat. Now what we want to do is normally we would go into that very first single crochet and slip stitch. And so instead of slip stitching, we are just going to begin our next round. So just make sure you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, great. So I'm going to help it along because it's going to be a little tight here. So I'm just going to help it along. I hope you guys can see okay. It's a little gloomy out today because it's raining. It's been raining a lot the last few days. Okay, there we go. So I've inserted and then I pull through. This first one you're going to have to help along. It is going to be a little tight. And in fact, for this project, if you're a tight crocheter, this is going to come in handy for you. And then, so you pull that through and now you're going to single crochet. So tighter stitches will help because it will help give our hat a little bit of stiffness. Now, what I want to do, because this is the first stitch of my new round, is I'm going to put a marker there so that I remember that was stitch number 1. So for round 2, I am just going to place 1 stitch into every single stitch. So I have already got 1, and then I go into the next stitch. So that's 2. I know that I have 6 stitches, right? And then in the next one, I have 3. And then I have 4. And the next one is 5. And it's already going to start to curl upwards. And that's okay. And then the next one is 6 and is just before that marker. So we know the marker is the beginning of our round. Okay, so you can see it's really curled up. Now what we want to do is we want the curl to happen, but we want it to curl down. So you're just going to kind of fix your work a little bit so that the center, there we go. Okay, so that was round number 2. So round 1 was 6 stitches. For round 2 and 3, we are going to maintain our stitch count. So that is the rhythm we're going to work with. So round number 4 will increase, and then round 5 and 6 will remain the same. Okay, so we're going to go on to round number 3. So we are still just placing 1 stitch into each. So I'm going to take this marker out momentarily and single crochet. Again, it's still going to feel a little tight because it's a small area we're working into. Okay, single crochet, and then I replace that marker so I don't forget where I started. And then again, 1 stitch into each all the way around, which should still give you 6 stitches at the end of round number 3. This is round number 6. Oh, see, very splitty. Okay, there we go. So 3 rounds are now complete. Okay, so as I've said, these first few rounds are going to be the trickiest because it's a really tight area. And then sometimes I'll take the end of my crochet hook and I'll just kind of poke it up through just to make sure that the shape, the tip of the hat, see, you can see that tip is coming through. Okay, so now we're going to go into round number 4, and this is where we're going to add an increase. So essentially, every 3rd round that you do will be an increase. So we increased in round 1, 2 and 3 was the same, and then round 4 is going to be an increase. 5, like I said, 5 and 6 is the same, and then round 7 is going to have an increase. 8 and 9 will remain the same, and then round 10 will have an increase. So hopefully that makes sense. So for round number 4, what we're going to do is we are now going to place 2 stitches into each stitch. Okay, so I'm going to take out my marker. So for the very first stitch here, okay, I'm going to place 1 single crochet, but then I'm going to go back into the same stitch and place a 2nd single crochet. Okay, and then make sure that you replace that stitch marker into the first single crochet you did. Okay, and then all you're going to do is you're going to repeat that for every single stitch all the way around. So we have 1, and then we go back into the same stitch, and we have 2. Okay, so at the end of round number 4, if you put 2 stitches into each, you should have 12 stitches in total. So we've doubled our stitch count. And also, I might actually just snip this tail because it might be distracting for you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and finish it for round number 4 and snip this tail, and then I'll come back in a moment. Okay, so I finished round number 4 and I now have 12 stitches. So at this point you can see it is starting to flare out, which is exactly what we want. So you're going to go on to round number 5, and as I've said before, I know I repeat myself sometimes, but I want to make sure that the beginners really get it. So for round 5, you're just going to place, I'm going to take the stitch marker out, 1 stitch into every stitch. So at the end of round 5, you're still going to have 12 stitches. Then at the beginning of round number 6, you will do the same thing and still have 12 stitches. So I'm going to meet up with you at the end of round number 6. Okay, I've completed round number 6, and now you can see the top of your hat taking shape. So round number 7 is now going to be an increase round. Okay, so for round number 7, we are going to increase into every second stitch. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to insert and place 1 single crochet. I'm going to replace my marker. Okay. And then into the next stitch is we're going to place 2 single crochets. So I have 1, and then back into the same stitch I have 2. Okay, so then in the next stitch, I have 1. And into the next stitch, I have 2. And you can see a lot of times this yarn is pretty splitty. So I just have to take my time. Okay, so this is now going to cause a little bit more of a flare out. So that's what's going to help our hat to grow. So round number 7, you are going to increase into every second stitch. So you have 1, and then you have 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, all the way around. The end of round number 7, you should have 18 stitches. Okay, so this does follow the principles of crocheting a circle. And if you are curious about that as a crochet lesson, I'll leave a link to that in the description box down below. It'll give you a base idea of how to work out any circle. Okay, so in this case, instead of every round, see, like for the brim, we would increase in every round, and that's what causes it to remain flat. But in order to get kind of like we'll call this a cone-like shape, even though it's not a cone, you don't want to increase in every round because otherwise it'll stay flat. So in our case, we are saving our increases for every 3rd round. So that is going to be kind of the method to create until we get a nice big enough opening that we're happy with. So this is the part where we talk about if you want to size this up for like an adult or an older child, let's say, and you actually want this to fit on their head. What you would do is you would keep this method of increasing. You would just, instead of stopping at the round that I stop at, which is around number 18, you would just continue on with more rounds and rounds and rounds until your opening fit nicely over your head. Okay, so that's my little tip on how to size your hat up. And then when we talk about the brim, I'll also talk about how you would do it for an adult size, which is pretty much the same method. Okay, so go ahead and finish round number 7, increasing into every second stitch. Then you know what to do. In round 8 and round 9, there are no increases. So it's just 1 stitch into every stitch, and you will remain with your stitch count of 18. So I'll meet up with you at the end of round number 9. Okay, so I've completed round 9 and I still have 18 stitches, so you can really see the flare. So we're now going to go into round number 10, and this time we're going to increase into every 3rd stitch. So before it was every 2nd stitch, and it's every 3rd stitch. So you can see I changed stitch markers as well because the other one kept falling out. So I've got a lot of stuff going on here. So I'm going to take that out. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm actually going to begin with an increase just to change things up a little bit. So I'm going to start with 1. I'll replace my stitch marker right away so I don't forget. And then I'll place a second one in the same stitch. So I'm starting with an increase. And now the next 2 stitches are just going to get 1. So I have 1, and then I have 1. Okay, then the following stitch is 2. That's our increase, 2 in the same stitch, and then 1 and 1. So at the end, and you can see it's starting to flare a little bit more there. So at the end of round number 10, you should have 24 stitches. So for round number 11 and 12, you know what to do. There's no increases. So I'm going to leave you from here to the rest of your height. So if you're following along exactly with my size, so 11 and 12 will have no increases. Round 13, you're going to increase into every fourth stitch. This means you're going to do 1, 2, 3 individuals, and then in the fourth stitch, you're going to have an increase. So at the end of round 13, your stitch count will go up from 24 to 30 stitches. So then round 14 and 15 will have no increases. It's just 1 into each stitch, okay? And then we have one more increase in round number 16. So in round number 16, you are going to increase into every fifth stitch. So that means that you would do 1 single crochet, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then into the fifth stitch, you'd get your increase. So at that point, your stitch count will be 36 stitches. And that is generally where, for this size, I like that opening. So, and then lastly, what you'll do is you'll do round number 17 and 18 with 1 stitch each. And that should still keep you at 36 stitches. So once you get to round number 18, then you will have created the height that you like, right? And if you're finding that you want to do your hat a little taller or have the brim or have this opening wider, then do a few more rounds. So if you want to go on to round 19 and do an increase, you would increase into every 6th stitch, okay, et cetera, et cetera. And then you keep doing that again in order to make a larger hat. Okay, so I hope that all makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and finish mine until I get to round number 18 so that I finish the cone part of the hat. And then in just a second, I'm going to meet up with you through Video Magic to talk about creating our brim. Okay, so I have completed 18 rows. In fact, I did 19 rounds. What I did is I added one more round just with no increases, just to give me a little bit more length. I could see that I did use a couple of leftover scraps, so the yarn texture did change. So this hat will look a little bit smaller than this one, or a little bit shorter, I should say. But so there you have it. And let me just double check here. So right now, my height for this one is just under 4 inches. But once we start adding the brim, it does rise up a little bit. And if you wanted to, you could add one more round, but I'm pretty happy with the way it is. And so now we are going to work on creating the brim, okay? Okay, so for round number 20, we are not going to increase again. So it's going to be another round of no increases. But what we are going to do is we are going to work in and around the stitch. So instead of just going in through the stitch, we're going to go in, but then around the little post of the single crochet. It's a very short stitch, so it's going to feel a little bit snug. But this is what's going to create that neat little ridge that we have in here. So I don't know if you can see that it is black yarn, but there is a little ridge on the inside of the hat, so you can see where the brim is delineated. So that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to take out this stitch marker here. And then, so what we're going to do is we're going to insert our hook into this next stitch, but then we're going to bring it around and insert it back in to catch the little post. And now we're going to pull through, and now we can single crochet as usual. So essentially what we're doing is front post single crochets. So let me just pull this open a little bit. It's a little tight there. So that is all you're going to do all the way around, 1 into every single stitch. So I'm going to do that again. So I'm going to go into the next stitch and then out there. Okay. Then you're going to pull up your loop like that and single crochet. Okay. So when you go into the next stitch, you will be butting up against where you just came out of. Okay, so I just worked out of this one, so I'm going to enter through there, but then poke through here. Okay, really shallow stitch for doing front posts. So that's what we're going to do. 3, 4. Okay, so I'm going to continue doing these until I've done a total of 5, because we are going to be doing some increases here. Okay, so this is how we're going to start the brim. So I've done 5 front post stitches, and now into the next stitch is going to be the 6th stitch. I need to place 2 stitches here, so an increase. So the increase will still be a front post. So I insert and come out to do 1 single crochet. So there's 1. And now I'm going to go back into the same spot, going around the same post and single crocheting. So I've placed 2 stitches into 1 space. Okay. And that is going to be the repeat for this round. So it's going to look a little funny there for a moment, but it will work itself out later on. So now you can start to see a little bit how that edge is coming through. So I'm going to do 5 single crochets around the front post, and into every 6th stitch, I'm going to place an increase. So 5, 2, 5, 2, all the way around, and they're all going to be front post single crochet stitches. So go all the way around, and then I'll meet up with you when you get to the stitch marker. Okay, so we now have round number 20 is complete, and now you can see where that ridge is really protruding, okay? And at this point, you should have 42 stitches. Now, if it turns out that you have like 41 or 43, don't worry about it. The main thing is that everything is still looking nice and smooth and uniform. You are going to notice that there's what looks like little points here, and that's because we did that increase in the front loop. So it's just kind of one on top of the other. But as we continue on, it's going to kind of work itself out. So in round 20, we did an increase into every 6th stitch. So in round 21, we're going to continue to increase, because at this point, we do want our circle to stay flat. That's what gives us this brim here. So we no longer want to kind of keep a smooth appearance. We want it all to flare out. So round number 21, we are going to increase into every 7th stitch. And we're no longer going to work into the front loops only. We're going to work into regular stitches. Now, what we want to do is make sure that we are not landing our increases into the same spot, because then you will get that little pointed shape happening. So we always want to shift our increases kind of in the center between where the previous increase was. So I'll show you what I mean. So what I'm going to do is, instead of stitching 6 and then an increase, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch up 3. So I'm just going to single crochet 3. So I have 1, and I'm going to replace my stitch marker right away so I don't forget. 1, and now there is 2 and 3. So this is just going to help me place my first stitch marker kind of away from that little point. So in the next stitch is where I'm going to place my increase. So I have 1, back into the same stitch, I have 2, and now I'm going to proceed to count 6 and then increase into the 7th. So we have 1, 2, and now I'm working over that previous increase, and this is what will make it smooth out. There's 2, there's 3, 4, it's a very splitty yarn, oh my goodness, and 5, so it's always catching on a strand there, and then 6. Okay, so I have 6 single crochets, and now into the 7th one I'm going to do my increase. So I have 1 and I have 2. Okay. Whoa. So this is the pattern you're going to complete to the end. Okay. See, there you go. You can see now it's starting to flare out to sit flat, which is what we want. So now when I turn this over, you can now see where the ridge is, and now the brim is going to flare out. So round 21, you're going to continue on. At the end, remember we used 3 stitches at the beginning. You will do an increase, and then you'll most likely have 4 stitches left at the end, and that is perfect. Okay, so at the end of round 21, you should have 48 stitches. So go ahead and do that, and I'll meet up with you at the end of round number 21. Okay, so I've completed round number 21. There you go. You can see the definite ridge. And now when I lay it flat, you can see that it's going to start to sit nice and flat. So I've got my 48 stitches, and don't worry, you see this little jump here. We will fix that at the very, very end. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go on to a round number 22 with yet more increases. So all of the brim is going to need increases. That is what helps to make it lay flat. So let's go on to a round number 22. Okay, so for round 22, we are now going to increase into every 8th stitch. So that means that we're going to do 7 single crochets, and then we're going to increase into the 8th. So we're just going to keep it straightforward now for this round, because we're going to skip right over that little bump. So this is why we never want the increases landing in the same spot, because that's going to accentuate that little point there from the increase. So we always kind of change the spots where we increase. So hopefully that makes sense. So I'm going to take our stitch marker out, and we are going to single crochet 1, and make sure to replace your stitch marker so you don't forget where you are. Okay, so we have 1, and now 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, working over that previous increase, 7, and now we're going to increase into the 8th stitch. So you know what to do. You're going to place 2 single crochets into the same spot. So I'm going to go back into the same stitch and single crochet. Okay, so that is the repeat for round number 22. 7 single crochets, 2 single crochets into the 8th, 7, 2, 7, 2, all the way around. So at the end of round number 22, you should have 56 stitches. Okay, so I've finished round number 22. And now you can see that brim is taking shape and the hat sits nice and flat. I just love it. So you are now going to continue doing a few more rounds of increases until you get the thickness of the brim that you like. Now, this yarn was just slightly thicker, even though it was also considered a medium 4-weight yarn. And I only did about 4 or 5 rounds. But this yarn, because it's sitting a little bit more looser, see how it can be really thin? I'm probably going to do maybe 5 or 6 rounds. So basically just go until you are happy with the thickness of your brim. So I finished round number 22. So maybe I'm going to go on to go up as far as round 26, maybe round 27. So we'll see that. So all you're going to do now is you're going to increase with each round. You're going to increase the number of stitches between each increase. So in the last round we just finished, I did 7 single crochets and an increase. So for round number 23, I'm going to do 8 single crochets and increase. Round 24, I'm going to do 9 single crochets and increase. Round 25, I'm going to do 10 and increase. Round 26, I'm going to do 11 and increase. So just make sure with every round, you want to try your best not to put the increase in the same spots. Okay, so we always want to kind of maintain a nice, smooth, rounded shape. So in this case, for round 23, I'm going to do 8 stitches. So maybe what I'll do is I'll do 4 first and then increase. And then from there, I'll do my 8 because I know that I will land somewhere in between these 2 increases. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so go ahead and do that a few more rounds, and then I will meet up with you once I'm done my brim, and then I'll just take you right through to the final stages of our witch's hat. Okay, so I have done a total of 5 rounds here. So I'm actually at the end of round 25. And you can see my brim now sits nice and flat. Look at how good that looks. And so all we need to do now is just kind of smooth out this little bump here because we were working in the spiral round. So we've been using single crochets. So what we want to do is we want to gradually smooth this little edge off. And so we're going to use slip stitches. Now, some people might just do 1 slip stitch here in the next stitch. So I'm just going to pull up a loop. Whoops. Pull up a loop and then pull through. But I find because we've been going so long with that little bump, for me, it doesn't seem quite enough time to just melt into that. So I'm going to do 4 more stitches. I'm going to do 5 stitches in total, just slip stitches to make this look a little bit more gradual. So there's 3, 4, and 5. Okay. So now you can see where the single crochets were and now the slip stitches. And see, by extending the number of stitches, it just smooths it, in my opinion. It makes it a little smoother of a join. So now I'm just going to snip my yarn and then I'm going to weave in my end here. I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to pull this up this way and I'm going to do one of my favorite ways to kind of hide a join as best I can. So I've just pulled it up from the center, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down through the center of the next stitch here, just like that. And a lot of times it makes it look hidden, just like that. And then I'm going to come back around and go down the center of the original stitch. And that usually makes it look like it blends in nicely. Look at that. Love it. Barely noticeable. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to weave in the tail around the brim here out through the back. And then I'll snip any excess and we're done. So I'm going to do that in just a little bit, but I just wanted to show you guys. And then you can kind of give it a little stretch. You can give it a little steam just to really smooth out those edges. So see how it's nice and rounded. You can barely see the little points there. You can give it a little stretch. And there you have your hat. Now this one came out a little shorter, but it's pretty comparable. Again, you could have done more rounds, which brings me to, if you want to size this up, I know I already touched on this, but so what you would do is you would keep doing rounds and increasing every 3rd round until your circumference reached the head size that you're making it for. And I'm just going to quickly measure the circumference of this hat to give you an idea. Okay, so I have my measuring tape here. And so I'm just going to measure the rounded side here. So just going to go. So I have, it's really wonky because this part is a straight thing here. So I'm just going to start counting from the 3-inch mark. And you just basically follow the curve. And this is a rough estimate. So that's 10 minus 3. So that's 7 inches around. So if I were making this for an adult, I'd want to keep going until I reached a circumference of anywhere between 20 to 22 inches around. That's the average adult size. So I think that's the biggest you would ever have to make it. If you're making it for a child, I think they fall somewhere in between 18 to 20 inches in circumference. So what would that be? In centimeters, that would be roughly 45.5 centimeters for a child. And for an adult, if you're doing anywhere between 20 and 22 inches, it would be between 50.5 and 56 centimeters. So that's basically the trick on how to size this up. And of course, obviously your cone is going to be a lot taller. Now, depending on the fabric that you use, the taller you make this, it might start to get wonky. See, this is pretty tightly crocheted using, that's why single crochets are going to be your best friend for the witch's hat, right? Because we don't want it to flop over. If you find that it starts to flop over, my little trick that I do is I get a little piece of paper, and actually I have a little piece of cardboard here that I'm going to use. And so this is a bit stiff, but I would kind of curl this. Here, let me use this. So I would get a piece of paper and I would roll it in a cone like this. And all I would do is I would just kind of stuff it through the top. And basically, see, it's not going to come out. And it just will help to keep the shape for you, especially if you want to wear it. So that's just a little hint. You could take a piece of paper. Actually, you could take some tissue paper and stuff it up at the top, and you would be a-okay. So a couple little handy tips there for you. So now all you want to do is you want to adorn it. So I just have this ribbon from, I think it was a gift bag, and it had these ribbon handles. So the gift bag broke, but I always save these ribbons because you never know when you're going to need them. And so then you can affix your ribbon around here. Look at how it already takes shape when you put the ribbon on it. And you give it a little tie in the back. Of course, you can glue this if you like. I'm just going to give it a little tie and a knot. And if you had a longer piece of ribbon, you could even make a bow and let it hang through the back. I know sometimes people do that. But if you don't, then you can just kind of tuck it in and hide it just like that. And there you go. Okay. Okay. So there are your witch's hats. And the technique, like I said, is the same for any size. And obviously, if you make an adult size, your brim really needs to be a lot wider. So let me see how much this one came out to. So this is 1 inch. This is also 1 inch to 5. So I would say an adult brim, I would even take it as far as 5 inches. Like on average, a hat brim is going to be 3, but because it's a witch's hat, you want it to really come out. I would go as far as 5 inches for your brim if you're doing this for an adult size. Okay, so I hope you found it pretty straightforward, maybe a little easier than you thought it was going to be, and so much fun you can have with this hat. Now, if you're just going to use this for some table decor, you are absolutely done. And if you have any questions at all regarding this project, please do feel free to leave it for me in the comment box down below. I do know some of you like to email me directly, so feel free to do so. You can email me at info@crochetcrafty.com. Now, don't forget, please make sure that you attach a photo of your work if you have a particular issue. That way I can have a closer look and be able to better answer your question, okay? And as always, come say hi to me. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at The Stitch Sessions. So if you're good with that, you are good to go. Now, if you are interested in attaching this to a headband, then stick around another minute or two, and I'm going to show you how I am going to affix my hat to the headband. Like I said, you can easily just glue it on the edges here and press it down on the headband, and you are good to go. I am going to go ahead and sew mine down. So I'm just going to take a little bit of the same color of yarn. I'm going to take maybe something like, that's a lot, maybe about 18 inches. What the heck? So I'm going to take 18 inches. I'm going to start with this, and let me just grab my headband. Okay, so I have my headband, and for the orange one, I've picked the brown headband. It really probably is best to think of like the color hair. Like if you want this to blend into your hair, if you've got black hair, then I would have picked the black one because it'll blend nicely. If you've got brown hair, then the brown one's good. If you're more want to kind of stay in tune with the hat itself, then you can pick whatever color you like. Okay, so let me take this off here for a second. Okay, so I'm going to thread my yarn needle here with that piece of yarn. And now all I want to do is I want to find just a random spot. So I want to make sure, yeah, my seam is back there, but you can't really tell. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert my hook, I think from the bottom here, yeah. And I'm going to poke it through really close to the brim or the edge of the inside here, and I'm going to bring it up. Okay, and I'm going to leave a bit of a tail here. And then I'm going to go down in the next little spot there and come down. So I've got something that looks like this. And now I'm just going to place it on the headband. And I'm just going to tie it. So I've got each side of the yarn, just like this. So all I want to do is I want to trap it in here, okay? And I'm going to just give it a couple of, turn it so that the knot is on the inside. It's a little awkward. Let me put this down here. There we go. I want that knot. There we go. I want it facing flat. So some of you might think, oh my goodness, this is definitely would have been easier just to glue it. But I think this way is going to be much more secure. So there you go. So it's already technically secure, right? Then you would do the same thing on the other end. But what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to wrap it a few times in this yarn. So I'm going to go back up through that same little area here. See, you can't even see it because the yarn is the same yarn. It blends in nicely. And then I'm going to go in through the same spot there. Just like that. See? Gets blended in. And so now I come back around, make sure it wraps, go up through that spot again. See? And now it's getting trapped in there. So I'm just going to do that about 2, 3, or 4 times until I feel like it's nice and secure. Just like that. And then again, up. And then back in. Okay, so I feel like that's good. And I'm going to give it one more knot just to make it extra secure. And then I will tie off my ends. Just like that. Now, you don't want to do too many knots because remember, this is going to sit on your head, or you could make sure that the knot sits to the side. Actually, that's pretty easy. Just like that. Okay, and I'm going to snip my yarn nice and close and snip this tail. And there we go. So you can see it sits pretty secure. Just like that. And now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And I always like mine to be on a slight tilt. And the cool thing about having it with this fabric is you can actually slide it down. So you can maneuver this a little bit. So if you had glued it, you wouldn't be able to maneuver it. But see, I like how it sits on an angle like that. So I'm going to do the other side. And then I'm just going to replace my ribbon here. And like I said, you can glue yours down if you like, which I may do at some point. Okay, so if you wanted to add this to your headband, I'm trying to do it so you guys can see, then that is how I'm doing my headband, and you are ready to rock your hat. So we have it there in orange, and then I'm going to do another one in black here. So I would use black yarn to do this one, and it would be the same thing. So I hope you guys really enjoyed working on this project. It's super quick. It's a great hat project. And that's it for the month of October for the Hats All Folks Crochet series. And if you make the adult size one, please do tag me, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, or send me an email with a photo. I'm dying to see how your witch hat comes out life size. And if you found this fun and you know of somebody that would really enjoy working on this, please do feel free to share it. And if you like this, make sure you give me a thumbs up and let me know that I'm on the right track with the types of seasonal crochet projects that you guys want to see. And if you're new here and you've enjoyed hanging out with me, make sure to click that subscribe button. Come hang out with me every Wednesday morning when I upload a brand new tutorial. Now, don't forget, I also forgot to mention that you should come and check out the website, which is crochetcrafty.com. And you can find a lot of great resource tools there for you, most especially the sizing charts. So if you're making certain items like hats, mittens, or sweaters, things like that, I've got fabulous sizing charts there for you. They're absolutely free. There's also a bunch of free written patterns and a link to my Etsy shop for other patterns if you'd like to support the channel. So that's it for me today. And I hope you have fun working on this. Happy crocheting. Take good care of yourselves as always. And I look forward to seeing you guys in next week's session. More fun crochet projects coming up for you for the season. So I'll see you guys in next week's session. Bye-bye.